FSPN coming to you live. Frankie from Flatbush. We have breaking news. Officially official as of 1 minute ago. The Baltimore Ravens have parted ways with head coach John Harbaugh. Play hardball with Harbaugh. This is very surprising, and apparently, according to the reporting, one of the main points of contention was that Coach Harbaugh refused to entertain the idea. Get out of here, he said with that, of relieving the offensive coordinator, Todd Fruitfish, of his duties as offensive coordinator. So apparently, ownership, others, maybe Eric DaCosta over there, the loser's curse, remember that, said, well, what about Todd Monken over here? Can we blame him for, the ball going, remember that? I mean, if the ball goes through the uprights, none of this is happening. And Aaron Rodgers is out of the playoffs and the Steelers fans are crying. But instead, the ball went and missed. And now everybody's all upset. Harbaugh out. Baltimore Ravens got a vacancy. Todd Monken probably out. It seems like Harbaugh and Monken are butt buddies, so they're not going anywhere. They're like a pair over there, I guess. So, if you're looking for a head coach, you take yourself John Harbaugh, like the Giants could have a Harbaugh over there, and then your offensive coordinator is Todd Monken. No doubt about it. It's going to be a pair, probably. So now John Harbaugh has put something out as of 2 seconds ago. Well, I was hoping for a different kind of message on my last day here someday, but that day has come today. Written weirdly, but okay. It comes with disappointment, certainly, but more with gratitude and appreciation. Oh. Gratitude to the owner of the organization willing to bring in a head coach who made his mark with special team success. Yeah, he's a special teamer. He's that one head coach who came from special teams and had a long career. As a head coach, very, very rare to see that. A difficult thing to do. And appreciation for all the moments, all the years that are etched into eternity. They're etched into eternity. Well, I don't know about that. People forget things very quickly. I hope a legacy built on faith, always fighting, always believing. I hope a legacy. Man, that doesn't even make sense. Somebody put this together for Mr. Harbaugh and didn't know about grammar. Values built into an organization through a team that are worthwhile, good, and lasting, and that are admired by fans and this is really something. All right, so he puts out a statement. He's out of there. Somebody wrote this for him. This is really kind of... Can't even whistle today. Sometimes I can whistle and sometimes I can't. There it goes. Anyway, the Ravens move on. So that is something. Former Cowboys coach Jason Garrett is interviewing with the Titans on Friday. Holy smokes. The clap master himself getting in on the action. So there's just a lot going on as we come on the air on this Tuesday. It is high. It is far. It is Tuesday. A Tuesday Newsday coming at you. I'm Frankie from Flatbush. The feds hate me the most shady. Frankie, baby, now let's go. We got a lot going on because the coaching cycle is circling, and now this is a gigantic curveball into the whole process. Nobody was anticipating this. There were some questions. Hey, what about this Harbaugh fella? They haven't won the Super Bowl in quite a few years. But, of course, they have high standards over there. This is interesting. So Harbaugh immediately becomes a candidate for all the open positions, including the Gigantes, and also means the Baltimore Ravens need a new coach, and what will they focus on? Of course, they have Lamar, and of course, they have Derrick Henry, and that combo has not been able to go to the Super Bowl or far in the playoffs at all, surprisingly. So, does this mean Lamar is on the table? uh, Probably not, but you never know. I mean, the new people coming in may say we don't like the way Lamar plays. He's too unique for us. We want a more traditional person. All right, well, but anyway, that's the big news as of right now. As we were coming on the air, the Harbonious one out in Baltimore, all because of a field goal off to the right. Looked like it was going to be good, then it went. And some people say maybe the NFL, with their little chips in the balls, maybe they made it go because they wanted Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs. Okay, we don't know about that, though. But nonetheless, we here at FSPN, we usually have a docket. So we're going to bring it up as soon as I type it in here. Sometimes you got to type it in and make it come up. And open it up and go to the docket because we need to know, what are we talking about today, Frankie? Well, there's the first one. 2025 season final presser, AG and Mougey. Can you believe it? It was a season to forget. Indeed. So they put their final presser out and came out and talked to the media for the last time. Next time you'll see them as at the owners' meetings somewhere nice and warm. And they talk in the hallway, and they have a big table for the head coaches, you know, those gigantic tables. And then everybody talks to them. That's the next time you'll hear from these people, but a lot of work to do. But, you know, some interesting nuggets I thought came out of the final presser of the season. A much different tone from Aaron Glenn, which I think is good. Hopefully Aaron Glenn is learning on the job and is developing as a head coach in the face of the franchise here. Understanding what's going to happen to him in the media if he's a certain way. Understanding what's going to happen if he sets certain expectations where you come in, you say, we're going to win and we're going to win now. Okay. Well, when you start 0-7, the fan base is going to get very, very toxic very, very fast. And so maybe he's learning that, because what he said in this presser was, well, you know, we feel confident. They said, why do you feel confident? Obviously, the record was terrible. They said, well, why do you feel so confident? And he said, well, you know, now we've got a year under our belt of experience, which meant, and he called himself a rookie in this one. Yeah, which meant, okay, well, when we hired you, you had 0. You should have come in and probably finessed the language a little bit. You can't come in and say, I'd like to learn a little bit. You know, you got to give me a little time, fellas. You know, you can't say that, but you can finesse the language a little bit in order to manage expectations. Because if the expectation's up here and you come in here, problems. But he did also mention that he needs to have synergy with the new defensive coordinator, which tells you he didn't have it with Wilkes. I don't know what these people are talking about. When people are talking about the defense, you need to keep in mind one thing and one thing only. All of these morons like Zach Rosenblather and Tim McMaster-Bader and Country Club Connor and Dick Chimney, you know, Rub It In Rich, you know, where he finds every stat you can imagine that's bad for the Jets and publishes it and talks about it. All of these morons don't really understand defense. The basic things you need to understand when we're talking about finding a fucking defensive coordinator who knows what the fuck they are doing. First thing you need to understand is not blitzing and not man fucking coverage. It's, are we a 4-3 or a goddamn 3-4? If these idiots in the fucking media don't start talking about the differences between a 4-3 and a 3-4, I think I might lose my mind. Okay? Now, some of you longtime listeners will understand and know. This is something that's been a little bit of a bugaboo of mine, going all the way back to the time when I was on Gunny's show. Remember when I was on Gunny Gumby's show? Master Sergeant Gunny, remember? A lot of people got mad at old Frankie for going on that show and saying, hey, our defense is way overrated the way our personnel are right now. It's not the same defense. At this point, we were transitioning from year 3 to 4, and I said we lost too many people on defensive line for it to be any good in this scheme. And everybody said, why? And flipped out and were throwing tomatoes at me in the chat. Okay? Turned out I was right because I know what I'm talking about. And then I came back after the season to gloat on Gunny's show, and people got mad at me again for suggesting perhaps we should switch to a 3-4. Now, just switching to a 3-4 doesn't magically, change things, but I was proposing something a little different, and people didn't like that. And part of it is that these media people who influence so many people, I can only influence like 10 people maybe, but big media, the big media people, they can influence tens of thousands. They can influence the whole fucking fan base, let's be honest. So what we want is for them to understand the difference and start talking about the difference. A 4 down front is an attacking 1 gap front. That means you have 4 down linemen, and they pick a gap, which means left or right of the person in front of them. This is very simplified, but this is the basics you need to understand about defense. And they just go into that gap. They either go to the guy's left or his right. They get one, and then they go upfield, and that's it. Well, that's not it, but that's sort of like phase 1. That's what we ran under Saleh. That's what the Atlanta Falcons run. It's what the Houston Texans run. It's what San Francisco runs, of course. It's what Denver runs. It's what a lot of the big defenses run, the really good ones in the modern day. And for that, you need 8 or 10 really good and 2 or 3 all-pro defensive lineman level players. Now, a 3-4 is a 2-gap read and react system. Your defensive linemen, there's 3 of them. That's why it's called a 3-4. The defensive linemen go into their offensive linemen, hold them up, do not attack yet, look over their left, look over their right. That's why it's called a 2-gap. And depending what's going on in the backfield, they decide at that point how to shed that block and either go left or right. That's why it's called 2-gapping. This is very, very basic. This is the very basics of defense. This is not a Joe Blewett type review here. But that is the very first thing that needs to be discussed with any of these candidates. Because if you're talking about Brian Flores and you're talking about Wink Martindale, those are 3-4 people. And so you would think, since Aaron Glenn said, I'm going to need synergy and it's going to need to align with me on defense, those guys are probably out unless he's talking about something else. I mean, because traditionally, Aaron Glenn runs a 4-3 defense. And if that's the case, so then if we get Radio Raheem Morris or we get somebody else who, traditionally runs a 4-3, then you go, okay, we're going to be in a 4-3. Then you have to invest in your defensive line. Must. You cannot have too many great defensive linemen. When one comes available, you get them. You trade for them, you sign them in free agency, you overpay for them, you draft them, you overdraft them. You cannot have enough of these guys if that's what you're running. Now, if we hire somehow a Brian Flores, unlikely. Wink Martindale, maybe likely. That one, he's less of a hot name right now and maybe just looking to get back into the NFL and maybe just wants to be back in New York where he was with the Giants for a while. Settle back in over there before he retires. He's getting up there in age. So I would say Martindale is probably more likely than Flores for us. But if he comes, then it's a total change in personnel. And it's going to be more linebackers. That's the 4 part of a 3-4. And fewer defensive linemen. So instead of these fucking morons like Zach Rosenblatt talking about man fucking coverage, it drives me insane. If you want to lose a bunch of fucking football games, run a bunch of man coverage. Especially against a mobile quarterback. It's one thing if you got Jared Goff or fucking Aaron Rodgers or, Kirk Cousins back there. Okay, run some man because they're not going to run on you. But in our division, we got Josh fucking Allen, Drake fucking May, and who knows what the hell's going on with the Dolphins. But against those two, for sure, you cannot run a lot of man coverage. The other thing with man coverage, if you're going to run it, you need a hellacious pass rush. Hellacious, because they need to get to the quarterback in fewer than 2.5 seconds. And you're hoping that your corners and everybody playing man just holds up for 2.5, 2.7 seconds, and that's it. Any longer than that, and they're going to get cooked. And so you can't have the quarterback running around and doing all this. You need to get to his ass within 2.5 seconds. So if you're just talking about man coverage and you're not talking about, well, they've got a hellacious, pass rush like the Texans, with Danielle Hunter, the real deal Danielle Hunter, and Will Anderson, and all those people we got. They got Sheldon Rankins down there. They got tons of dudes. Our old, Sheldon Rankins used to be with us because fits the solid defense, which is the D'Amico Ryans defense. It's the same thing. If you're not talking about that part of the defense being hellacious, you cannot run man. You will get burned very quickly. All right. You had to get that off your chest, didn't you, Frankie? Well, yeah, but it's relevant to our DC search because all these idiots are talking about man coverage, and all they wanted to talk about when Ahmad Gardner was here was, well, are you going to travel with the people? Aren't you a real man, and aren't you going to travel? That's so fucking stupid. Oh my God, is that stupid? You do not want Ahmad Gardner traveling with anyone. God, he's not Darrelle Revis, for God's sakes. These people have no idea what they're talking about. Anyways, they also said every option is open for quarterback. They know they got to improve quarterback. But the body language that they displayed, both of the dudes, was one of confidence. I think they're getting good signals from Woody that they're safe. Not to worry for next year or the next year, probably. Now, I'm sure Woody's going to change his mind if he doesn't see progress. But if we get the quarterback situation situated and we see progress meaning 6, 7, 8 wins, my goodness, could we get to 9? Holy smokes. But even if we had 7, you say, well, under Saleh we had 7 a couple of times. What's the big deal about that? Yeah, but we didn't have the long-term quarterback situation situated. If we do, and that quarterback's playing well, but we just happen to lose a bunch of games at last second, whatever happens. But the quarterback's playing well, sort of like the Giants. The Giants feel good about Jackson Dart right now. And so, yeah, they had a bad season, but at least they have Dart, and at least they have Neighbors, and they have a hellacious front. So there's hope. And that's probably what kept, Shane his job over there. So we could have a losing season with only 7 wins, say, but if we had Mendoza or Moore or whoever it is, and they're balling out and they look like the future, okay, I think the fans would accept that and then say, okay, year 3, we load up and let's go because we got 3 first-round picks in 27. They did not fall for the media trap question to throw the players under the bus. So Aaron Glenn was given an opportunity to throw all his players under the bus by these jackal media fuckfaces, and he didn't do it. He said, nope, it's on me. I take all the slings and arrows. I'm not going to, it wasn't on the players. I should have been better, but obviously it was on the players. But I liked the answer because they gave him an opportunity to throw the players under the bus. He said, nope, I'm taking accountability for this. That's good. Of course, now he wasn't the best, but for the most part, it was because our roster was terrible. We talked about that all from the summertime, and I hope that you will realize that I was right, not because I care about being right so much, except that hopefully you will understand that this is the channel you want to be at. This is the place you want to be. Hit the subscribe button right now because I have a track record here. I have called a market differentiator called this thing up here. And when I tell you the roster's no good and not good enough, and then it plays out as it has these last few seasons, I told you exactly what was going to happen, then it happened. Not because I was predicting, but because it was obvious based on the personnel that we had. So then hopefully this time when it comes, free in March and April, the free agents and then the draft, I will tell you honestly, and hopefully you're subscribed to the channel. Hopefully maybe you even joined the inner circle because you're going to get information here that you don't get a lot of other places. So it does seem like Breece Hall is coming back from all of the tone of Mougey and AG and how they answered the question. They want him back. I mean, all the reporting has been that the Jets are very interested in bringing him back. The way they answered these questions today, I think he's coming back. So we're going to have a running game. And then you noticed also, and probably instructively, Dan Campbell was asked, what grade do you give yourself? Dan Campbell, the head coach of the Lions. He said, man, man, Give a dunk, and then you get kneecaps. He said he gives himself an F. F. Surprised he didn't say F minus. So Dan Campbell, they went 9-8, and he gave himself an F. So that's probably sort of the coaching philosophy that where Glenn is getting, it's all on me, sort of thing. You blame yourself. And that's the thing you should do, because you certainly can't throw the players under the bus. That would not go over very well. It's a players' league, they say. And then everybody wants to fire the coaches as soon as the players are not good enough. All right. Country club positivity. What? What is going on, Frankie? Well, Country Club Connor, I believe he's listening to this show. Because everything I say, he fucking comes out and says. And listen, if Country Club Connor Hughes is watching this, good. Hopefully, he's in big media. SNY. You know what's funny? I don't know who owns SNY. I'm going to look into that. But anyway, he's in big media. SNY, they carry the broadcast. He's a big deal. Everybody knows Country Club Connor. So if he can take my ideas, steal them, and then put them out into the mainstream and let them influence the Jet fans more than I can, fine. I see you out there. But he put out an article today, and it says, Jets, here's the headline, Jets may present best situation to develop young quarterback among teams picking early in 2026 NFL draft. What? Excuse me? Wait a minute. I'm supposed to rant about how we can't do anything, and Joe Bading Dong would have a rant ready to say Glenn's an idiot, Mougey's an idiot, Jaime El High's an idiot. What? Country Club Connor says, unlike 2018 and 2021, the Jets have built an ecosystem for a young quarterback to succeed. Connor Hughes, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this is what I've been saying. Out of all the teams I've been pointing out, the Raiders are the team ahead of us. They're totally dysfunctional. They fired their head coach every single year, going back to Gruden. The hell's going on there? But we're dysfunctional. We're the most. What about the Raiders? Oh, but they have Tom Brady. Oh. Yeah, a guy who's never done anything other than win 7 Super Bowls. He says, you can already hear it, and because this is the Jets, those cries will only grow louder. Once again, New York is coming off a miserable season, well short of the playoffs. Once again, it needs a quarterback. Once again, the draft looms as the likely solution. And once again, there will be warnings, like from Todd McShithead. Got a video on Todd McShithead out. Check it out. Was pretty popular. Warnings for top prospects like Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore to do whatever they can to avoid Gotham City, where promise and potential are said to go to die. It's inevitable. It's also misguided. The reality is that the Jets, yes, the Jetsies, may present the best situation for a young quarterback to thrive among quarterback-needy teams expected to pick in the top 10. The infrastructure is there, regardless of reputation. This is exactly what I was saying. It's not the same as when it was with Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold had nothing. Zach Wilson had very little to work with. We got a decent O-line. It could get a lot better if we sign AVT and, God forbid, Linderbaum. If we give Linderbaum 22, will he come here? It's a lot of money for a center, but we could have an elite offensive line. We got Garrett Wilson. We got Adonai Mitchell. We're going to get a round 1 wide receiver, Denzel Boston, Makai Lemon Lime, very refreshing. A top-notch. Makai Lemon those guys are all really good. So that's basically your top 3 receivers. That are going to be two first rounders and a second rounder. With a lot of people thought should have gone way higher, Adonai Mitchell. And then behind that, you have John Mechie, a good little possession receiver, and Isaiah Williams. All he does is good things. Every chance he gets, he catches the ball. Isaiah Williams, he can run jet sweeps. He's a good little player. So that's a good room. And if we get AVT, which seems likely by all the reporting, it seems like we can get AVT or Simpson. I would probably take the risk with AVT. Then you need to draft a backup just in case. We probably could go hog wild on Linderbaum just to get him here. And now that Now that they blew up Harbaugh, who knows what the new head coach is going to look like, what he wants, what they want to spend on. We don't know. They'll probably retain Linderbaum, though. I mean, but in any case, but so it's good, and it's going to get better, and it's going to be better than the Darnold and Wilson cases. So we're probably retaining Breece Hall. That's what all the reporting is. One way or another, it might be a transition tag, it might be a long-term deal, but Breece Hall's going to come back. So that you got the running game. The tight end room is okay, especially if we add another one who's a blocking tight end type. Cosmeric comes to mind, but Marlon Klein, I don't know, somebody, we'll add a tight end somewhere in the draft, 4th, 5th round. So we'll have a decent room. We got a blocking one, we got a receiving one, maybe we get a combo one, So things are pretty good in terms of the supporting cast. And this goes for either the young quarterbacks or if we want to go free agency route. If we want to sign Malik Willis, you're going to have to convince the agent. The agent is David Mulugheta. Guess who else David Mulugheta represents? Among other people, he's one of the top agents in the NFL. So he represents a lot of people like Dak Prescott, for example, and Justin Herbert, I believe. But Deshaun Watson. So all of the Cleveland Brown fans out there thinking that David Mulugheta is going to put Malik Willis on the Browns, I don't see it. He's going to want Deshaun Watson to play. And because from Deshaun's point of view and the agent's point of view, Mulugheta, they're going to look and say, well, listen, I led the league in passing one year, which he did when he was down in Texas. Why couldn't I do it again? I'm healthy now. He's going to get healthy by the start of next year. I'm healthy now. All I got to do is beat out Shador, assuming they don't add anybody else. And I could beat him out, and I could get back to my previous form, and then get another contract after this ridiculous frigging contract he got. So nobody wants to think about that, but think about it from the agent point of view. You think he's going to put Malik Willis on the Browns to block his other client? I don't think so. When he could put Malik Willis elsewhere where he's not blocking one of his clients, like, for example, the Jets. What if it becomes clear the Raiders are definitely taking Mendoza and Moore goes back to school and we don't like anybody else college-wise? Well, Malik Willis. You make the same case that Country Club Connor just made about these young quarterbacks, where they might go and what they're surrounded. I mean, we could surround Malik Willis with all the same things. And wouldn't that be better than going to some other bum team? And where you're not blocking another Mulugheta client, So I don't think the Browns work for Malik. Maybe there's another team that works better for him. Maybe, I don't know, Arizona. What does Arizona have? Marvarati Marv and Trey McBride and what else? I got no running backs really. Is James Conner going to come back and be good? So, a lot to process, but I think the Jets have set themselves up at least reasonably well for this offseason. So I agree with Country Club Connor. And listen, credit where credit's due. If suddenly these reporters start doing good journalism and they start, making sense, we will point out the positives here. There's a lot of negative stuff. There's a lot of negative stuff on the ticker. But as you see the thing about Tom Brady going through there, and that's the other thing. Tom Brady's a freaking, part owner of the Raiders. Nobody knows what that guy wants to do. Everybody tries to mind read Tom Brady. Oh, he wants Mendoza. You don't know what he wants. And secondly, whatever he does want, he's made a lot of mistakes, as I point out up here. He's been involved in a lot of gates. Deflate gate, spy gate, boat gate. Remember, he was right in the middle of that tanking thing, and the tanking. Well, tanking wasn't for him, but tampering with regard to the Dolphins, he was right in the middle. They wanted to get Brady, they wanted to get Sean Payton. They were tinkering and tampering and got fined significantly, including losing a first-round pick. They got docked a first-round draft pick. That is serious business. And Tom Brady's right in the middle of all of it. So we don't know what he's going to do, what he wants, or what decisions he's going to make. So far, as an executive, his decisions have not exactly been great. And what training does he have at that? Well, just because you can play quarterback, now you can play executive. Two different kind of jobs. But after all, he is close to John Spytek. That guy's a little shady. His name is Spytek. But nonetheless, they were butt buddy roommates back at Michigan. God knows what they were getting up to back then. At Ann Arbor, somebody should look into that. Maybe Pablo Torre should find out what those two were up to over at Ann Arbor. Pretty sure it's not going to be a clean record. But in any case, when Country Club Connor Hughes or anybody else wants to be reasonable and write some good stuff, and maybe it's only because it seems so outlandish and outrageous that he can write that now. In other words, going to catch somebody's attention now because things are so negative about the team that if he writes something positive, it's sort of like clickbait in reverse. The fan base is so toxic. If I write something positive, I'll get a lot of clickies. Usually we think of clickbait as negative stuff about the subject matter, but now here it is positive stuff. So, but hey, look. These idiots want to do a random act of good journalism sometimes. We here at FSPN are for it, and we will praise you for it. We'll say, good job. We'll give you a clap on the back and say, way to go. Way to go. Have a Modelo on us. All right, Football World Roundup. Well, the cycle is circling and cycling and spinning. The coaching cycle, that is. So the first cycle that has to stop spinning is the coaching cycle. And that's already spinning. People are getting fired. People are, well, not hired yet. People are getting fired. Interviews are being requested. Cliff Kingsbury has been axed, for example. And so Kingsbury and Joe Witt both got fired by Dan Quinn. So apparently the coordinators were the problem. They're the coordinators you hired, Danny. But nonetheless, as members of this channel know, there's a cliff cycle. And the cliff cycle prophecy is being fulfilled as we speak, as it always is, because it's an eternal truth. What that cliff cycle is, well, the members of this channel know, and so you should join this channel as an inner square, inner circle, or inner triangle member. And then you would know in graphical format what the cliff cycle is. What does that mean? What are we talking about, Frankie? Well, the members of this channel know, and that's why you should click the join button down below. Now, the other thing that came out, there's so much news now, it's going to be crazy. Maybe we will stick to 3 days a week. I don't know, here on this show. But at some point, the news is going to slow down. So the news came out from Field Yates that Kirk Cousins, the Kirko Chains, is certain to be released now. Why? Because they redid his contract, and on March 13th, something kicks in, a lot of money, where either they or some other team who would acquire him would have to pay like $67.5 million. Nobody wants to pay that, the thought goes. Therefore, he is going to be released before that date. So that's the deadline. So he'll be released on March 12th or March 13th, the beginning of the league year. And so Kirk Cousins is going to be a free agent. Now, think about this. Why wouldn't the Raiders and your Tom Brady, man, be all about Kirk Cousins? Pocket passer just like Tom Brady was. And why would they do that? Well, they need a bridge. They have very little talent on the roster. They need to stock the roster. And getting a Mendoza or a Moore right now, what good does that do? He's got nobody to throw to. He's got no offensive line. The defense is horrible. You're going to put him in the worst possible situation? So maybe you sign Kirk Cousins. He's better in the dome. They have a dome there in Vegas. Better on that. He was really good in Minnesota. He was less good with the Falcons, but he was injured. Played okay. I watched a few of his games down the stretch. I think he's a guy who can bridge you. Why would they want to bridge? Well, if they sign Kirk Cousins now, they could trade with the Jetsies. Make the Jetsies go to one. The Jets would want to go to one to prevent anybody. Let's say we really wanted Mendoza. You trade with us. We'll give them a one next year. We can give them 2 players for their roster. We could give them, for example, Will McDonald and Arian Smith. Wouldn't that be nice? Plus a 1 next year, plus a, I don't know, a 4 this year, something like that. That's quite a package of young players that they need. And I mean, think about their defense. And then the other benefit is then they're just going down to 2, and they could get the best defensive player that they want, or if they want one of those wide receivers, right? So then let's say they do that, and now their front is Max Crosby, Reuben Bain. Let's say they take Bain at number 2, Will McDonald, and Tyreek Smith. I forget that guy's name, but their first round pick from a few years ago. That's a pretty good. Now you got a front. Now you got a 4-man front. Let Max Crosby not be double teamed all day. If you're going to single team Will McDonald, hey, he can beat some guys sometimes. And now you're building something. And then you bridge it with Cousins, who's a veteran who doesn't need everything perfect, knows how to operate an offense. Obviously, the rest of your draft picks, some free agents, you'll build it. And then once you have a stable situation with the roster is at a higher level, then in 27, when there's going to be about 1 million of these people available, then you can go get it. Because whoever they hire, they're certainly going to have more than, I think they probably want to get away from this 1 year, every year we fire somebody situation. So you're going to have a longer leash. And certainly if you have a bridge quarterback, whatever happens with the bridge, okay. But then in 27, now you got at least 2 first-round picks, 1 from us. And you can go get one of those 6 or 7 people that are going to be first-round grades. I mean, Lenora Sellers might be the best out of all of these motherfuckers, of the last 5 or 10 years. Going back to, whenever the hell Josh Allen was, or Mahomes, that class. Sellers could be better than all of them. And so do you really want to go into, do you really want to sit there and say, well, we have Dante Moore, he's 20 years old, when you could have Lenora Sellers? Now, Sellers has to learn how to play football, but how to play quarterback position, but the traits on that kid, and not only that, all right, if that's not your taste, what about Arch Manning? What about Julian Sayin? What about CJ Carr? What about Darian Mensah? What about Brandon Sorsby? What about, there's tons of these dudes that are probably coming out in 27. I'm sure I missed one in there. And if Moore goes back to school, he comes out then. That's a lot of talent. And wouldn't you want to set yourself up where you get that franchise quarterback then with a much better team? You've got your foundation set. You build some of it this year. You bridge it with Cousins, and then go get one of those guys. And then with another free agency period, another draft, now the quarterback comes in with a better situation around them that you can succeed with. Seems to me that would be a much better plan than just taking Mendoza now. For the Raiders, that is. So all of these things are related to another. That's why we're keeping a track on NFL news, because everything relates to other things. For example, Mary Kay Cabot is reporting John Harbaugh's mother, Jackie, is from Cleveland. Dad, Jack, John, and brother Jim were all big Browns and Guardians fans growing up. So maybe John Harbaugh goes to the Clevelanders. Boy, if Harbaugh and Monken go to Cleveland, what does that mean about their quarterback situation? Well, Deshaun Watson's kind of like a junior version of Lamar. Junior version. Browns requested permission to interview Seahawks DC Aiden Dirty for their vacant HC job. Never heard of him. Adam Schefter is reporting in the first, and this is where you hate these reporters, right? Because they're sucking the dicks of the agents. And at least in this one, he's naming the agent and saying it. Adam Schefter, go. Quote, in the first 45 minutes after John Harbaugh was fired this afternoon, his agent, Brian Harlan, said he received calls from 7 NFL teams expressing interest in his client. There are currently 7 NFL head coaching openings, including Baltimore's. So that means one team didn't even have a fucking opening yet. Maybe the Buccaneers. And so you see how it works. Normally the name of the agent is left out, but this is how these guys become insiders. This happened very quickly. Mike Garofolo says the coaching staff and others in the Ravens building were caught by surprise. There was smoke here, but many thought the fire would be put out and Harbaugh would stick. Not to be. Uh, Jason Garrett interviewing for the Titans job. So all of these things are very interesting. For example, Brandon Thorne, go. Lost in the Falcons cleaning house is that offensive line coach Dwayne Ledford is again available. He was retained last time after doing another really nice job this season. Big opportunity for a team to bring in one of the most underrated line coaches in the NFL. What if we bring in Dwayne Ledford and we give, our O-line coach did a good job this year. We could give him, a sort of like assistant line coach / tight end coach title. Just move him a little bit, and maybe we fire the tight end coach that we have, Coach Blasco. That could be an improvement right there. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Why would he go here? Because we'll pay you, buddy. If you're an O-line coach, you don't have, you just go whoever pays you the most. You know what I'm saying? And one thing we've seen, Woody will spend on coaches, and hopefully that includes the O-line coach, who is the second most important coach other than offensive coordinator / play caller, and, of course, the head coach. So, man, the news is coming hot and heavy. I tell you that much. Cameron Wolf, go. The Cardinals have requested to interview Patriots passing game coordinator Thomas Brown for their head coaching job. He's been a name on the cycle the last few times. Brown has a huge part of the Patriots 2025 turnaround. I would not say that. I would say Drake May and Mike Vrabel. He has play calling and interim HC experience along with learning under Sean McVay and Mike Vrabel. Yeah, I would say it's more Josh McDaniels and Drake May, but hey, this guy was there too. So the circle and the cycle goes around and around and around. And the Giants, of course, are going to be very interested in John Harbaugh. Country Club Connor Hughes, go. Spoke to someone who worked many years with John Harbaugh. That would be Joe Douglas. Tell me this isn't what the Giants need. Quote, program builder. So he's getting this straight from his text message from Joe Douglas. Program builder from day one. That was my impression of him. He sets the tone for the whole building. Team first, tough, detail driven later. Joe. Now he doesn't say that's Joe Douglas. That's Frankie speculating. So, that would be interesting. And with all of these job openings, who's really out there haunting the whole process? Bill Belichick. Is Bill Belichick going to be lured back into this? Or is he really going to stick with UNC? 4-8 his first year, I believe it was. So, yeah, that happened. Man. Well, so I don't know. Maybe we'll do another news show tomorrow, depending on how much news comes out, I guess. But if not, then maybe we'll come back Thursday. But if we come back Thursday night's the next college football playoff game. That one we get to watch, and then Friday, and then is another one, and that means 2 more teams eliminated, and that means those players get to decide what they want to do, coming out, staying in, transferring, what are they doing? And then Saturday we got playoff games, and then Sunday we got more playoff games. So a lot of football going on here. January 2026. The information you get here is differentiated from the market. You will rarely find someone giving you the kind of information we give you right here on FSPN. If you agree that we're unique and different, then please click the subscribe button and give the video a thumbs up and consider joining the Inner Circle. It's just $2 a month at the lowest level. So, you got an extra $2 a month. What are we talking about? Join. Fucking join. Join. Click join button now. Do it.